Amanda, are we ready? Okay. Good evening, everyone. It is 6:30, so I'm going to call to order the regular council meeting of Monday, June 27th. We would first of all like to acknowledge with respect that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking people, and we are honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. I'm going to look for approval of the agenda, which is the near term, long term, and regular council meeting agendas for June 27th. If there's no objections, I'm going to say that those have been approved unanimously, and I don't see any objections, so that is done. Moving on to Mayor's message. The only thing that I wish to share with the public this evening is last week, myself, some of council, and some staff members were able to attend the Indigenous housing on Whale Road. And they were they were unveiling the totem pole for that. And so that was a wonderful ceremony. It was about 2 hours long, but it was really impactful. There's one specific woman I wanted to share a story with that I spoke to afterwards, and she did speak at the totem ceremony, and she was a single mom with 2 young children, and she told me that before she moved into this housing unit, she had been in 14 homes in the last 2 years, that she was just trying to escape an abusive relationship and was really struggling, and found and was able to get into this location. And she said to me, she said, the thing I love the most is that I leave with my kids, and we go places, and we know we have a home that we're coming back to. And that was huge. And it was a story that she shared with me, which I just found really moving. And then also a real compliment to staff. The main proponent who built, and I'm sorry, it used to be called the Vancouver Aboriginal Trust, and they changed their name. And I'm sorry, I cannot remember what their current name is. But what they came to tell us was that they had two projects, one in Colwood, and then at the very same time, they had almost the identical project in the city of Vancouver. This unit has been built, and it's been open close to a year. And in Vancouver, they have not even broken ground yet. And so they said it was amazing to work with Colwood and their staff, and really saw the priority to this and moved it along quickly. And so I congratulate staff for making that happen, and making that happen in such a timely manner. It's something that I think all of Colwood can take real pride in. That is all that I have to share this evening. So I will go to adoption and receipts of minutes. 4.1. This is the council meeting minutes of June 13th and the report of the public hearing. Are there any errors, omissions, questions? If not, I will say that they are being adopted unanimously, which I will say. And then I will look for a receipt of the Emergency Planning Committee of March 15th. Are there any errors, omissions, questions? And if not, I will also say that they are received unanimously. And those are both done. Moving on to public participation. Members of the public will be provided, an opportunity to present concerns or ask questions of council. Comments pertaining to the following matters that have been subject to a public hearing are prohibited at this meeting. Bylaw number 1700-05, the official community plan housekeeping amendment, and bylaw number 1913, CD 33, 2350 Souk Road. We had 17 written submissions in favor of additional cell towers in Colwood were received and will be appended to the agenda. They were received after the cutoff period. And also, I know there were some emails that were sent directly to Mayor and Council. So Mayor and Council, Corporate Services have been copied on those, so those will be added as well. So I will look to the public. Is there anyone in the public or online wishing to speak? I'm sorry? 3? Great.
Yeah,
Then I will
people
allow you to
online.
introduce the first one.
Go ahead, Gabrielle.
Oh, Amanda, you're going to need to use your mic. Or Gabrielle.
Sorry, so I see David McGrath is online. He's from WA Architects. So go ahead, David.
David, if you could please just when you start, just give us your address, and then you have 2 minutes.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, Your Worship, council members and staff. My name is David Chase McGrath. I'm a partner at WA Architects. We have offices both in Vancouver and Langford. I just wanted to state something. I know that I had presented the project on Island Highway on our last meeting. It's great to see you guys again. One thing that we did find through our design development is that we missed out on calculating a mezzanine level as well as the added residential storage space. And speaking with planning, we realized that the FAR that is being put in the report and what you guys will be voting on today is short. We by adding up, if I could share my screen, I can just show you the areas. And please let me know once you see the screen.
Oh, we can.
Okay, so this is the ground floor of 1752 Island Highway project. When I had discussed this earlier, we had talked about adding a second floor for storage over the bike center. That would also, because we have 17 feet clear at the CRU, this whole level is 17 feet. And we missed to include this. Well, we hadn't included it before. Plus, we missed the mezzanine level of the townhomes here, which puts us at 2.12 FAR as opposed to the 2, which is on the report, I believe, from planning. So we would kindly request that it be amended to 2.2 so that we are within the FAR that this project has shown. Although the areas weren't provided to you, the areas within the building, it hasn't changed any massing. We haven't moved the walls around. It's just the use inside. There were 2 areas that we had missed calculating on.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. That is everything I have. Thank you.
That's all I have online for public participation.
Okay. Okay. Is there anybody in the audience under public? Yep.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Ben Mycroft, representing Gablecraft Homes. I'm here tonight addressing item 7.3. I wrote a letter and it was after the cutoff time, so I just would briefly like to, I guess, address the content of my letter. So representing Royal Bay, we've been working for some time to try to find a solution to the terrible cell phone signal that we have at Royal Bay. I just wanted to identify a couple of points with regard to that item. There is currently in your land use bylaw, and also there is a policy in place that effectively prohibit a cell phone tower from being implemented at Royal Bay. And so that's what, in my view, the staff report that's been provided tonight would address with the recommendation is directing staff to essentially allow the federal regulation, which does exist, to do its job, and that the old City of Colwood land use bylaw and policy provision, I think were put in place for good reason at the time. They're currently prohibiting really what's now become an essential piece of infrastructure in any modern community, and Royal Bay as a emerging regional hub, it does not feel appropriate to have the level of cell phone service that we do have there. Some examples of the challenges that we're facing at Royal Bay are mainly to do with safety and new business generation. We've got the example of Big Wheel Burger. We've brought in Big Wheel Burger to the Sequoia food truck compound, and they weren't able to make their point of sale debit system work because there's no cell phone signal. They've had to purchase a Starlight satellite link, which is, I think, outrageous that someone would have to buy a satellite system to make a basic point of sale system work. The new retail village that's under construction now features these flow electric car chargers. Those car chargers don't operate unless they have a cell
Your
phone.
2 minutes is up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else? Okay, then we will move on. We're going to move on to 6.1 delegations. This is scenic. So you guys have 10 minutes and then a couple of minutes for questions. Oh, sorry. Can you hit your button just to make it red, right in the middle? There you go.
How's this?
Yeah.
Perfect. I'll just wait for us to set up a little bit. Great. Good. Okay. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Harley Gordon, and I'm here on behalf of Scenic, which is the Citizens Environment Network in Colwood. We're a community organization focused on environmental solutions for our municipality. And I'm here with Carol Brown, and due to extenuating circumstances like good weather, not all the delegation could be here. Okay, so a little background here just for this presentation. So council has demonstrated a lot of leadership by declaring a climate emergency in 2019. And Colwood's working on a plan right now to address climate change. It's going to focus on mitigation and adaptation. Part of this strategy is going to be through reducing emissions that the city causes. Now, municipal governments like Colwood can influence around 50% of the community's emissions through bylaws, land use, planning, building permits. So there's an impact that the municipal government has. Now, Colwood's draft low carbon resiliency plan proposes a 49% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from 2007 levels by 2030. You know, that's less than 8 years away now. So the real question is, how can this be achieved? And that's what I'm here to present. So first, emissions from buildings. First, their construction and their operation are quite significant. About 50% of the community's greenhouse gases are generated from buildings. And of that 50%, over half of it is from building operations. This means heating space, heating water. And we've got several different types of heating systems. There's electric heating systems and there's natural gas heating systems. Now, if we have a 50-year-old home, like there are many in Colwood, and it has a heat pump versus a natural gas furnace and natural gas appliances, you can get emission reductions of up to 98%. This is a really big number. This isn't even, I'm not going to mention too much on just the health impacts of natural gas and methane leakage in people's homes, but just looking at emissions, we can really reduce emissions from the community by influencing the type of heating systems that are in people's homes. So building permits and bylaws are directly influenced by the mayor and council. Now, Colwood has a Step Code 3 bylaw, which influences material, construction, emissions, and operation of buildings. However, our current system does not prevent new natural gas hookups. Therefore, it continues to allow a significant source of emissions in new projects. If Colwood were to enact a bylaw incorporating the requirement of a low carbon energy system, think heat pump, stringent, this is a way that we can achieve emission reductions, like our goal for 2030. This is the sort of action that might occur if perhaps we were in some sort of climate emergency, like was previously declared. This is an achievable climate solution. It's easily achievable. And furthermore, Colwood does not have to be the first municipality to do this. These are all municipalities: North Van, West Van, Richmond, Surrey, Powell River, which is smaller in population than Colwood, all have bylaws that now require low carbon energy systems or a higher step code. So this is actions that you can take as a council to ensure that new builds in Colwood require low carbon energy systems, and avoid natural gas hookups. These bylaws don't burden investors or consumers or construction companies. All these cities I list here, they're not down and out, they're up and coming, they're growing, and they're vibrant communities. So this would not cause any detrimental harm to Colwood. With that, I think we can improve our bylaws, we can modernize them, and we can be future focused and look for a greener, cleaner, and more resilient Colwood. That's it. Thank you. I'm here for questions. So is Carol Brown.
Excellent. Thank you. I will to council. Councillor Baxter.
I would like to move that staff include options in the low carbon resiliency plan for requiring higher step levels for buildings which use fossil fuel energy systems and a lower step level for buildings that are all electric and use heat pumps for heating and cooling.
Did you provide that to staff ahead of time? No, and the reason I'm asking is just so that we could get it up on the screen, because that was a very in-depth motion. So maybe what we could do is, could you maybe say it one more time, and could you try and get it on the screen for us?
I did copy.
Or did you? Sorry, go ahead.
I did copy it to the CAO, but I don't know if it was forwarded to anybody else.
Okay, great. So it'll come over in a moment, and then it can be in front of us. While we're doing that, Councillor Baxter, I'll come back to that motion in a moment, just for efficiency. Do you have any other questions? Otherwise, I'll go to Councillor Kobayashi and I'll come back to you.
No, but I'm prepared to do some motivation. If,
okay, I will. I promise you. I will come back to you. Councillor Kobayashi.
I'll second the motion so we can get the discussion going on it. But I do have a quick question here. Actually, it's to staff. In your plan, is this part of your plan? Are you including this as part of your plan?
Oh, okay. Hi, Your Worship. To Councillor Kobayashi's question, yes, staff are looking at this as an option. As the presenter spoke to, it is an approach that's being taken up by municipalities in British Columbia. Mm-hmm. We're researching options as to how it could be brought forward as part of the low carbon resiliency plan, and then a follow-up in the fourth quarter as soon as possible after the adoption of the forthcoming plan. So I do know that we've got a member of our building department with us tonight, but I did speak with the chief building inspector earlier today, and suffice to say, both community planning and the building department are working on this.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Baxter, why don't we come back to you and you can motivate?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the graphical case study series was produced by members of the BC Hydro Community Energy Managers Network, and that is available to anybody who wants to look at it. And it was produced in response to requests from builders and local governments wanting real world examples of homes that have been, that deliver these higher level steps of performance. And the staff at the Building Safety Standards branch checked that these buildings were in compliance. And to just give you a brief summary of the results, there were 5 buildings that I looked at, and the one in Campbell River was built step 3 and actually cost $0 more than it would have done under the old code, and yet that's a 20% saving in energy. In Invermere, they did one at step 4 that was 2% more. Kamloops, step 4, 4% more. Victoria, step 4, 2%, and another one in Whistler that was step 3 and only 2% more. So I ran the numbers on what the energy savings would be compared to what the investment was of the extra few percentage. And the homeowner, well, I guess the community gets a 13% return on investment when these things are built to step 4, which is a pretty good investment.
Great, thank you. Is anyone else? We already do have a mover and seconder motion. I'm just confirming you're comfortable with what's in front of us. I'm not seeing any other questions, so I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you guys for attending this evening. Moving on to excuse me, just before I do 7.1, I was neglect to say that we do have 2 missing counselors this evening, Counselor Parkinson and Counselor Jansen, both let me know ahead of time that they were not able to attend this evening. Moving on to 7.1, this is Counselor Kobayashi situating sidewalks for arterial streets and roads. Mr. Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. This was actually, I'm going to make the motion for the recommendation, but this was actually motivated 2 years ago in November at Committee of the Whole. I was actually chairing it, and it was suggested at that time by Councillor Parkinson, and I had asked him if he would like to make the motion, at which time our then Director of Development Services and Engineering said, don't worry, we've got it. So I just wanted to make sure that this didn't fall through the cracks, because I see, I mean, I'm not seeing everything, but obviously I'm seeing the lines being put in for the sidewalks and the roads right now. And I was concerned that, you know, to our direction that we said that we would move it to the property lines. That would give us maximum flexibility for the future in case we do change things, so we're not having to re-tear up sidewalks. I just thought I'd reintroduce this as, boy, oh boy, I just don't want to make sure this doesn't slip through the cracks. You know, I know it was something that was said, that they said they were going to do by staff, and I certainly didn't want to make sure it was lost from corporate memory. So I figured that this was the best way of bringing this motion into play here. So that's my motivation, and I would like to recommend the recommendation.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder? Yeah, Councillor Baxter has seconded. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I don't quite understand the motion as yet. So are you proposing to eliminate bike lanes or put bike lanes on the other side of the sidewalk? I just didn't understand the wording. So I wonder if we could allow Councillor Kobayashi to illuminate us a little bit.
Okay, thank you very much. Absolutely not eliminate bike lanes. The whole idea was to get it out to the maximum so that we, you know, we have the flexibility of, you know, if say you want road widening or, you know, you want protected bike lanes, you have that flexibility because we're going to the property lines. We know we've got the maximum cross section. So that was the idea behind this. And barring like already trees or telephone poles or whatever could be, whatever obstruction could be there. I mean, we got to work around those like we do right now. So that's all I was trying to do here, was to make sure that we maximize what we have for future. Thank you.
Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was a bit confused actually as well. I understand through the years that's actually been the policy of the city to build sidewalks up against the property line. So usually when we see a motion like this, there's been a problem or an issue. So I'm wondering what the issue was that would have prompted this, because I'm not aware of one. And I just want to make sure we don't get too bureaucratic in approving sidewalk projects when we already have kind of a methodology and policy in place where they're situated.
Machosen Road would be a good example. Just take a look at where the sidewalks are right now. I know they're existing, but where they've marked right now. So I don't know if that's the plan to expand or what they're doing there, but I know they're planning the widening for the cross section. So I was just concerned. I mean, I don't know if I'm fretting about nothing, but talking with the engineer on site, he wasn't even aware that they were supposed to go to the property line. So that's the example I want to give, and it's right there.
Okay. Does staff want to comment at all? on that?
Administration have no concern with the particular motion that's on the floor at this time to bring options to situate sidewalks at the extent of the right of way when a sidewalk is being considered. As Councillor Kobayashi has indicated, there are often implications to mature trees and or power and or depending on the nature of the slopes involved, it could substantially result in additional height with respect to retaining walls, and that can often bring additional costs. All of that said, this motion will direct staff and allow council of the day to adjudicate those trade-offs in each situation.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, I think Councillor Kobayashi's motion is timely because the pressure on road right-of-way width to achieve more lanes is growing all the time. And if you look at the sidewalks built to date on the chosen road, they, in some cases, have departed from the property line to save trees, or in some cases, simply to create interest in the sidewalk. And I think that's becoming a more and more pertinent decision as to when to do that and when not to do it. And I think it's appropriate that the options land on the council table and council make the decision, which, as the CIO has pointed out, could create a lot of extra cost moving right to this property line in places, but may be necessary for future traffic volume. So I think it's appropriate it land here on this desk. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands, so I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 7.2 bylaw, excuse me, this is the draft Gateway and Triangle Lands Vision and Action Plan public comment period. This is a recommendation from the June 20th Committee of the Whole. May I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Logan, second by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. We had the opportunity actually to talk to some of the people that attended the Committee of the Whole, and there weren't happy people. I can tell you that right now, especially with the Gateway side of it. And I had to actually had an opportunity to talk to Mr. Wansborough down at Holiday Inn this morning and discuss this. And basically, their recommendation, all three, that's the Saunders family, the Wansborough family, and the folks that own Suburban Motors and A&W. And they said that their concerns were not addressed solidly. And if we want to have our best salesmen would be people that, you know, we'd rather have proponents than opponents right now. And I can tell you right now that they are opponents right now. They're not for this as currently visionated. And they just feel that they weren't listened to at the, this is what they tell me. So I'm just telling you, just passing this on to you right now. What was stated, I didn't actually talk to the Saunders, but I did talk to Councillor Jensen, and he got an earful. I did talk to the folks that own the Suburban and Suburban Motors, A&W, and the Holiday and the Wansboroughs. So I know exactly how they feel about it, and they just said, you know, we'd rather be proponents than opponents of it right now, and in its current form, they were not listened to. And the second point that I certainly want to make at this point in time is what worries me. I did a little soul searching and thinking about what Councillor Day said. We don't want to get rid of parkland. And it goes against the grain of everything that we stood for and what our objectives as a city are. And that really sank into me, actually. And I just went, geez, I don't know. I don't know about this. I don't think it's the right thing to do. But you know what? The other stakeholders in this still are the other 4 municipalities. And I'd certainly like to have a little bit of their buy-in before we make all this public. I think we're doing ourselves a big disservice by prematurely trying to get this out too soon. I think that those discussions have to happen before we actually release this to the public. So that's my opinion, and that's all I have, Mayor.
Councillor Baxter.
I have to disagree with Councillor Kobayashi. I don't think it's premature to go to the public. I think that it's a good idea to go out to the public before you set things in stone, so that they can have their say, and their say can be considered alongside the comments of the people that you mentioned. And I know at least two of the people you mentioned, Councillor Kobayashi, and they're perfectly capable of communicating with all of council about what they disagree with, what they might like to see instead. And I would love to hear that. I don't think that there's an emergency here. None of this is going to be built anytime soon. This is a very long range plan. And I think there's lots of time for discussions and alterations. On the topic of parks, I didn't see anything in that plan that removed parks. I did see a possibility that we might use other types of buildings in association with recreation and cultural buildings on West Shore Parks and Rec land, but that land is that's concerned is mostly building and asphalt right now. And I thought that the idea in the plan that by using denser construction with more types of buildings might really be important in funding the replacement of some of these facilities we've got as they age. Remember, this is a 30 to 50 year plan, and some of those facilities are already decades old, and within that 30 to 50 year time frame, they'll need rejuvenation. And if we can get some money-making buildings associated with them, or create more grant opportunities, all of the partners in West Shore Parks and Recreation might find that very attractive. But that's a decision that will be made probably some considerable time after you and I have finally retired and don't do this anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to first time speakers. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I won't be supporting the plan, and my reason is really that this was a special planning initiative that was undertaken to look at an important part of Colwood, but it is reversing the decision that was made at the OCP with considerably more input from our neighborhoods, and moving from where we were considering under the OCP up to 15 stories, we're looking now at 50 stories in this area. And that is a significant change. I agree that if we're going to consider those kinds of changes, then I think the time to consider those changes is when we're looking at our OCP, not something completely outside of that. I know that some people will see the benefit in those 50-story buildings, in affordability, in being able to maybe build them to a higher sustainable standard, including with considering potentially passive buildings as a way to address our climate emergency, for sure. But that discussion needs to be held in a way that our community is fully engaged. And it's not easy to achieve that. And the OCP went to great lengths to engage our community and look at what could potentially work. And I think to so quickly set that aside and come up with a new plan isn't going to create a sustainable result. It pushes us towards a yo-yoing back and forth. And it's something that this community has considered quite often and you know, rejected the idea of really tall buildings because nobody wants to live in the shadow of a very tall building and not be able to utilize solar or grow things in their garden because they don't have the sun anymore. And that may be too fine a grain, but you know, some people are going to be in favor of this plan. Some people clearly have some issues with the plan. I certainly don't want to endorse a plan that considers parkland being used for residential use. That's not, it won't lead to a good result in other areas. It pushes the boundaries of what is acceptable. So I think for me, I can easily, with a clear conscience, say that this is not what anyone in my community has asked me for.
Thank you. I'm going to go next, and then I'll go to Councillor Logan. The motion this evening is that council endorse the draft Gateway and Triangle Lands Vision and Action Plan for the purposes of seeking public and stakeholder comments. I've heard some at this table talk about us approving a plan this evening. There's no plan to be approved. What we're seeking is public input. And I think it's a shame to think that we're going to hide behind closed doors and talk to only the landowners and have them decide how this community gets built rather than taking it to the public. I have every intention of taking this to the public and hearing what the public has to say. So I will be supporting the motion this evening. Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too will be supporting it. And for those very reasons, actually, we will be going out to the public and to stakeholder for feedback. And I haven't heard from those folks that have been opposed, and they're usually not very shy at sharing their opinions, as we well know. But they will get an opportunity for feedback. And I guess my thing is we've had a lot of interest in that particular area of Colwood of late. And we only have one chance to really get it right. And I think it's incumbent on the city to not plan based on yesterday's opinion, but look at tomorrow and what the future will bring us. And once you have a building that's constructed or a neighborhood that's constructed, it's there for 50, 60, 70, 100 years. So I think we are really at the ground floor here to be able to shape a community to ensure it thrives and it is walkable and achieves all the objectives that the current OCP calls for. And I hear that this is going to be weaved into the OCP. So it's not like the OCP is going to be thrown out, but it's going to form part of it. And I think, you know, we owe it to our residents to think beyond the end of our nose and to see what our community is going to look like in 20 years. So that's my opinion. This is, the plan is bold, but I think that's our responsibility, quite frankly, is to think boldly and get the feedback from the residents and the stakeholders. So I'm not afraid of putting this out. And I don't think council should be afraid of putting it out for public and stakeholder feedback. Thank you.
Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Worship. You know, no one's arguing the point that it is visionary. I mean, it is very visionary. I don't have any issues with this at all. The problem is how we're doing this right now. I mean, I'll ask a question to staff. has the First Nations been consulted in this?
Through your worship. Staff have not yet consulted with local First Nations on this plan. However, it is our intent, if directed by council, to take that action next steps.
So it's a timing issue right now to me. And, you know, if I had my druthers, and obviously it sounds like the majority don't have any issues about this, but to me, I would have certainly engaged First Nations. I would have certainly engaged the other 5 stakeholders, especially what I'm talking about is the West Shore Parks land right now. I mean, I just feel that if one of the other municipalities pulled this on us, how would we feel? And that's what I have issue with right now. It's not this is not the issue that I'm talking about right now. It is bold, it's good vision. I don't have any problems. It's just the way that we went about this right now. And you want proponents, not opponents. And right now we're setting ourselves up for it right now. That's all I'm saying. Thank you very much.
I'll make one final comment. Landowners have a veto. Their veto is that they don't build it. So it's they have the ultimate say in this. And if there is a landowner who says this doesn't fit my vision, then it doesn't happen because they're the landowner. But I think it's important that we listen to the public. So I'm not seeing anybody else. I'll call the question. Those in, excuse me, Councillor Day and Kobayashi opposed. That motion passes. Moving on to 7.3. This is Mr. Borhol, our Director of Community Planning, regarding the communication antenna policy and regulation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The city has become aware of growing concerns regarding poor cell service in certain parts of the community. The most problematic areas being the developing portions of Royal Bay neighborhood and South Colwood, as mentioned by Mr. Mycroft earlier today. Conversations with TELUS Communications Incorporated, as well as with Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, the federal regulators of radio communication antenna systems, have led staff to the following conclusions. Firstly, that the city's communication antenna policy and zoning prohibition of, quote, transmission towers greater in height than 15 meters and transmitters with an output of in excess of 2 kilowatts, end quote, is limiting the development of new mobile telecommunication infrastructure in Colwood and restricting service in developing areas like Royal Bay. And secondly, aspects of the city's communication antenna policy and zoning regulations are not in line with the federal radio communication and broadcasting antenna systems policy, CPC 2-0-03, attached to the staff report before you. Therefore, staff recommend that council consider directing city administration to prepare draft amendments to the land use bylaw to remove restrictions on transmission towers in section 2.1.09-2F and sections 2.1.10-4 and draft revisions to the communication antenna policy to bring both documents in line with federal policy. I'd also like to note that there's a typo in the second part of the staff recommendation, the report, which should read, and that council consider directing staff to compile draft policy that would align the city's communication antenna policy with federal policy. Apologies for that typo. That concludes my introduction. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Day.
Thank you. I will be supporting the revision of the antenna policy. I know that certainly there are cell phone issues in some areas. I don't believe that the antenna policy is prepared to fill the void. So when we step back and we simply let the federal government do their thing, we are not protecting our citizens from the very real health risks that Safety Code 6 leaves us exposed to. That was brought forward to council some years ago by a very concerned and engaged group of Colwood citizens who went to great lengths to bring international experts to speak on the matter, who did their best to try to advocate for the federal government amending their policies. And unfortunately, the only conclusion that I'm left with is that industry is so tightly woven in with governance in the federal realm that there was no possibility to get an independent scientific expert to do anything about what's happening with Safety Code 6. There are other parts of Europe that understand that Safety Code 6 is not sufficient and that there are real dangers associated. And so I will not be able to support this.
Councillor Logan.
Thank you, Worship. I will move the staff recommendation as outlined by Mr. Borhill, the typo, and I'm happy to speak about that, Worship.
Sure, thank you. I got a Councillor Baxter seconded.
Thank you, Worship. I will leave it to the experts on the safety aspect. I'm not going to rehash that, but I will say from a business point of view and an ask by the residents, and actually there is a safety issue in Royal Bay and that area, and not being able to access 911 services because the cell service is so poor in that area. And that to me is probably the main concern for wanting to support this change, is to ensure that our residents down there can actually phone 911. And then our business community that is locating there have the tools to be able to operate appropriately. And I know that there's some concerns about the aesthetics of the tower. And I will say, as when I chaired the Crest Board of Directors, we worked with the Township of Esquimalt and the town of View Royal when we put up two towers, one in High Rock Park and the other at the View Royal Public Safety Building, to have those towers painted in such a way that they actually blended in to the park. They didn't stand out like a silver pole. They were painted green or brown to blend in and look like a tree. So, and they were widely accepted by neighbors as well. So I think it's imperative for us to revisit this. This is 13 years old. So it's imperative that we revisit and address some of the safety issues that the school and area residents in that neighborhood are facing. And it was clear that they're very supportive based on the feedback that we received over the last couple of days. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. If I can ask Mr. Mycroft, where would you locate the antenna? What are some of your proposed sites right now?
Thank you, Councillor Kobayashi. We, at this point, were this to eventually be the regulations changed to enable such a tower to proceed. I have been in conversations with TELUS Communications, and the only location that would be acceptable to Gablecraft on our lands, in recognition of the existing neighbors of the older Royal Bay development, as well as the neighbors in the newer Royal Bay development. I sort of look at this like it's like an airport. If you move in next to the airport, you should expect some noise. And I think any complaints about it aren't fair. But if they try to put an airport in after the fact, I think it's a fair point. So to address that, the only location that we would permit is over adjacent to Machosen Road, right at Latoria Creek Park. And that is near, I believe it's Duke Road and the Machosen border. And although there are some residents over in that area, they are significantly removed from the tower location. And they are, that particular location is about 1 kilometer away from any existing Royal Bay residents anyway. And I think that any new residents that we would then locate near that tower in the future would know what they're getting into.
So a second question, is there any other municipality that controls tower heights? Do they have bylaws that, to the best of your knowledge?
to the best of my knowledge, and we did do, thanks to Rachel Sansom, we did do extensive research on this throughout the capital region. With one exception, there is no local government that has any regulations whatsoever on trying to regulate where the federal regulation is in place. The only exception is actually Langford, and that's with regard to situating a new tower adjacent to existing residential development. And there's a fairly narrow radius that is a policy that frankly they ignore at their own will. But all of the other municipalities in Greater Victoria have no regulations whatsoever on this and allow the federal regulation to do its job.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to support this motion myself for a couple reasons here. Number one, I do know it's a big issue. During our recent Economic Prosperity Committee meeting with the small businesses, overwhelming number one issue was they can't do business here in Colwood, particularly those that live in Royal Bay, because they get cut out all the time, and so there's a lot of issues. But I guess more importantly, the way I look at this right now is that I don't know who the expert is. I'm going to assume it is the federal government. It's just like some things with the federal government. Aviation is controlled by the federal government. Of course, every aviation company wants to come in and they want to change the regulations, but it is controlled by that federal agency, and the track record is there. So, you know, that is why I will be supporting this motion.
Thank you. I'll also be supporting the motion. Absolutely have heard from the community from a business standpoint that they have struggled with it. But I want to touch back on the what Councillor Logan talked about, and that's specifically around safety. We have a new elementary school that's going to be built in the next couple of years. We need to ensure that they're self-service. There is a lot of parents who use the Get Home Safe app for their children, and they need to have access to self-service. And I think it's incumbent on us to ensure that we're keeping our children safe. So I will be supporting the motion this evening. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Councillor Day opposes. Moving on to 7.4. This is Jasmine Hernandez, our Manager of Development Services, regarding the interim community amenity contribution policy, legal framework, and procedural fairness. This is for information only. There's no motion this evening. Do you wish to comment, Ms. Hernandez?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have a presentation put together, but it's basically just coming back with the legal framework that allows council to negotiate CACs with every rezoning application, and a small table just showing the 4 applications that we had in stream while the new interim CAC policy was adopted. So I'm here to answer questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you. So I will look to council. If there's no questions, I'll move on to 7.5, but I'll pause for a moment if anyone does. It does not look like we have any, so thank you. Moving on to 7.5, this is Ms. Bovin, our Manager of Finance, regarding our 2021 Statement of Financial Information. There you are, online.
Yes. Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have a formal presentation, but I'm going to speak to the report and then answer any questions if you have any. Municipalities are required to prepare a statement of financial information, which we like to shorten and call the SOFI, on an annual basis, and this is required by the Financial Information Act. And the regulation states that it must be prepared within 6 months of the end of a fiscal year, and that it must be approved by council and the Director of Finance. A reminder for council, there's one difference between the statement of financial information. The amounts that are included in the statement of suppliers and the statement of remuneration and expenses are prepared on a cash basis, which means the financial payments were made in the calendar year. not necessarily expensed in the calendar year. So there's no way to marry up the information in those two schedules with what council has previously approved in the financial statements for 2021. That said, we're looking, due to that regulation requirement, for council to resolve that the 2021 statement of financial information be approved, and that the mayor, director of finance, and manager of finance be authorized to sign the approval of the 2021 SOFI. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
It's been moved by Councillor Kobayashi, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you. Moving on to 7.6. This is Ms. Russell, our Manager of Corporate Communications, regarding our 2021 draft annual report.
Thank you, Worship. Unfortunately, Ms. Russell can't be with us this evening. This report must be presented in a public meeting prior to June 29th of each year. It's been published on our website. We haven't received any feedback to date. Happy to present this report, take any feedback from council, and make any necessary edits.
Okay, thank you. So we do need a motion, though, to approve the draft annual report for the fiscal year ending. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yes, for the fiscal year ending March 31st. So thank you. Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, seconded by Councillor Logan. Is there any discussion?
Sorry, just for clarity, that's the calendar year, December 31st.
Correct. Oh, okay, not fiscal year. Thank you, calendar year. And I'm just going to make that change unless anybody objects. We'll just say that that's what it is. I'm going to call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. I know Ms. Lalonde isn't here either, so I'll go to Ms. Irvings, our Deputy Manager of Corporate Services, regarding Christmas closures, hours of work policy.
Thank you. In 2009, the Christmas closure hours of work policy was adopted.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just can't see you. Do you have a mic on?
Do you?
No, if you do, that's great. I just can't tell if you do or not.
Oh,
You do? You do?
yes,
Okay.
I do.
My apologies.
The policy provides for City Hall to close on the last working day before Christmas through to the first working day in the new year. The policy has been beneficial to staff as they are able to use their accumulated vacation time and overtime, reducing burnout and increases morale. During our policy review, it was identified that the Christmas closure policy would have City Hall close earlier than normal this year. Administration is asking that council rescind the Christmas closure policy to allow the CAO to provide direction for the winter closure through an administrative policy that will allow for flexibility and coordination of city operations. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Day?
Thank you. Just because there's nothing proposed as yet to replace this policy, I'm finding it difficult to rescind a policy and leave us basically in limbo until you bring it forward. So can you shed some light on why we're doing this?
Thank you, Councillor Day. I believe an unintended consequence of the existing policy would have City Hall closed on December 23rd. I believe the intention was for a closure between Christmas and New Year's to allow staff to use up any banked holidays that had not yet been used up. What we're asking council this evening is to dissolve the council policy, and it will be replaced with an administrative procedure to the same effect.
So just as a clarification, Councillor Day, so the issue was this year, for example, most city halls will be open up to December 24th, but because of the way the policy was written, ours would be the only one that was closed.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? So I'm sorry, did I get a mover and seconder? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to bylaws. Bylaw number 8.1, this is bylaw number 1134-06, traffic and highway amendments for recreational vehicles. This is for adoption. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Logan, second by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Councillor Day, then Kobayashi.
Thank you. I will be opposing this as I have all along due to the definition not being standardized.
Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much. I don't know if there's someone here that can answer my question, but it's just on, it was, I think it's for 7 days. You get that 12-hour limit, and then within 7, you can't come back within 7 days. So if I take a 5-day camping trip, I can't come back and park in front of my house with an RV for 12 hours. Is that how that works? I was just trying to understand that. I wasn't too clear on that.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Kobayashi, the bylaw indicates within 1 week of the expiry of the initial permitted time. This bylaw, unless directed by council, will be enforced on a complaint basis.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, not seeing any other, so I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Councillor Day opposes. Moving on to 8.2, bylaw number 1700-05, 2021 official community plan housekeeping amendment bylaw. This is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Logan. Discussion? Councillor Day.
Thank you. Again, I will be opposing this as I have all along. I do not believe that the official community plan that's being amended is as it was envisioned by the community.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anyone else, so I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Councillor Day opposes. 8.3 sewer LAS enlargement bylaw. This is bylaw number 1942, bylaw number 1943, bylaw number 1944, and bylaw number 1945. This is for, this is for adoption. May I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Baxter, second by Councillor Kobayashi. Is there discussion on any of these? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 8.4, bylaw number 1946, land use bylaw amendment CD 35, 1752 Island Highway. Ms. Hernandez.
Thank you, Your Worship. As the applicant explained earlier during public participation earlier today, we were made aware of a miscalculation in the gross floor area that got built into the zone as an FAR calculation. So I think we would like to see this bylaw amended and brought back for first reading at a future meeting, so that the public can comment on the specific density that is now being proposed as 2.2 as opposed to 2.0. This is the first meeting where we are making away with the public hearing on a property that meets the official community plan. So it makes sense for us to re-advertise and bring back a bylaw once it's corrected and there's no errors on the bylaw.
So Ms. Hernandez is basically asking council to consider a deferral until July 11th. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Without getting too far off topic, I just would like to flag that I find it difficult to follow our zoning map because we seem to have a different zone for every single application that comes forward. So we have comprehensive development zones. I guess there must be at least 35 of them because this is CD 35. And yet we're talking about the same types of uses. So I just find the whole way that we handle zoning to be rather confusing. In this case, the presentation, we're at a standstill because the calculation of the floor area ratio is different. That's not factor that most residents would understand well. And despite my best efforts, I don't think I understand it especially well after many years. So I just wish that we had a more straightforward zoning system so that if you're residential, then you have the same rules as somebody else who has a residential or commercial. It's very confusing, and so I'm happy to see this put forward, and perhaps at some point in time, council will understand why we do it the way we do it.
All right, thank you. I'm still looking for a motion to defer or look to a motion. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Kobayashi. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Baxter. No discussion on the deferral. So, and I'm sorry, this is a deferral to July 11th, the next council meeting. I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Oh, I'm sorry, you oppose. I'm sorry, Councillor Logan opposes. Moving on to 8.5. This is bylaw number 1947, land use amendment CD 28, zone 2, Latoria South. This is for first, second, and third reading. I get a mover and seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Baxter, second by Councillor Logan. Discussion. Councillor Day.
Thank you. So this is a primarily residential development, and yet continuing to hear from residents about the noise of mining operations in this area. And so I will not be supporting this coming forward, as I think that the city of Colwood has missed out tremendously on a source of revenue, as that is an industrial use.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands, so I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Councillor Day opposes. Moving on to 8.6, bylaw number 1948, election and voting procedural bylaw. This is for adoption. Moved by Councillor Baxter, second by Councillor Kobayashi. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Logan. Those in opposition? Nobody. All right, we're done. Good night, everybody.